mute your audio and turn off your video until the question and answer at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, you can use the chat to put it in. I won't look at those until the end of the presentation. The handout is out on the PC Club website, or I believe Jim will add it to the chat in another minute or two, because when he adds it to the chat, it's only the people that are currently logged in that can download it or see it, but he'll add it in another minute or two. Agenda, we'll cover a few club status items, and then we'll get to our main topic. Future agenda, the MACSIG had their meeting last week, so their next meeting will be January 20th. We also have our monthly question and answer sessions, and the next one's going to be in the new year there, January 3rd. And the topic in January for our general meeting is going to be smartwatches. So we'll talk about how they've evolved, all the options, all the functions, all kinds of options there with the smartwatches. Officers, Jim is our president, Linda is our vice president, Paul is our membership secretary, Paula is our treasurer, Chuck is our recording secretary, Mike leads the Macintosh special interest group, Andrew is our communication coordinator, I'm a director at large, and we couldn't do it without the volunteers and everybody else. Members old and new, dues, Paul sends out notifications when your membership is about to expire or has expired there. But also a reminder, if you are changing emails, so if you're retiring from 3M or just getting a different service provider, notify us or send an email to myself or Paul, and we'll get the change in, because that's the only way that we can keep in touch with you is through the email. If you do have suggestions for topics, you can email myself or talk to any of the board members. We're always looking for people to volunteer to present on hardware and software, whether you use it at home or at work. And if you don't want to present, if you could write a short, meaning a sentence or two, or a long multi-page article, that'd be fine. We'll include it in our monthly eBytes newsletter. Out on our website, we do post the slides from the different presentations and the handouts, and we try and record them, so most of the recordings are out there also. We have a deals section with codes. We have our eBytes newsletter, and this is the link. It's also on the handout and the emails that we send out to everybody. Just a reminder, if you haven't filled out the PC Club survey, you have 2 days to complete it before I start tabulating the results there. We have about 40 people that have completed it so far. Thank you very much. I believe we have a little over 100 or 105 members, so that's a pretty good number there. So thank you very much. But if you haven't, take the time. We use it to prioritize meetings, picking out topics, and I use the statistics in a number of the presentations I do, and people can use it to see what other members are buying and what they're doing with their PC. We don't mention any names. We consolidate all the information together, and we do not sell our list to anybody. So it is just used by our 3M PCC club. Okay, let's get to our main topic today, which is why are my devices slow? In the past, I said, why is my PC slow? But nowadays, we all have a number of devices, smartphones, tablets, laptops, desktops, you name it. It can be smart cameras, just about anything. This document provides information that you can use to optimize your devices that are running slow. And I'll also be explaining why it might be running slow. Some things you can change, some things you can't change. Options listed work for most of the devices, but may be in different settings on different devices or operating systems that you're using. But pretty much everything that I talk about is available on the different platforms for the different devices and that. You can spend money on software, and there's no lack of software out there that claims to help you optimize your device. But like I mentioned, most devices today already come with tools to help you manage and optimize your devices. Okay, first let's start out with just an overall of what's in some of these devices and what are some of the slower parts in the device. And I mentioned here slower old parts because certainly with the rate of change that we have in devices, excuse me, they become slow compared to the most current versions very rapidly. Some definitions, whenever I say the word software, I'm really talking about programs and apps. So depending on what you're using, if you're using a smartphone, it's apps. If you're using a desktop, you may have a combination of apps and software. But so whenever I use the word software, just assume that I mean any piece of programs or apps there. OS stands for operating system, and that's the operating system that is needed to run the software on the various device. Okay, the first piece of hardware on every device is a CPU, or central processing unit. This is what runs the operating system and the software. The big variable in the CPU is the number of cores or processors. In the old days, the first PCs had a single processor in them. Nowadays, you can have up to 32 processors in there, which means that it can be doing 32 independent things at the same time and not affect the other one. Speed is the other main factor there, and that's usually measured in gigahertz. And the higher the number, the faster the CPU itself. Another variable that you have in these devices has to do with devices like laptops and phones and tablets will slow down the processors because they don't want to generate too much heat and they don't want to consume too much power because these faster processors can overheat and need lots of ventilation. So they tend to slow them down. And power-wise, nobody wants their phone to run out of juice. So they'd sooner have it run a little bit slower and get another hour of using the phone. So you have those things going on in these different devices there. Probably the second most important thing in all of these devices is what's called a GPU, and it stands for Graphic Processing Unit, or sometimes you'll see it referred to as the video CPU. It manages and shows images on the device's screen, and it has all the same issues as the CPU. So in order to display that on the screen, or for you to be able to do things with touchscreen or run video, video has to be putting up millions of bits of millions of colors up on the screen, and it has to change that, resize it, move it. It has to have all that capability. So that's why there's separate graphics processing that's separate from the central processing that the software is running. Okay, another main component in all of these devices, and again, that graphic to the left there shows a desktop, but really you have all of these same things in your smartphone and in your tablet. It's just in a smaller size. RAM is very important. That stands for Random Access Memory. It's the memory to run the operating system and the software. In order for the CPU to be able to do a command or run stuff, it has to be in RAM. If you have too little RAM, it causes your operating system to spend time swapping software in and out to your hard disk drive or your solid state drive, making it run very slow, in some cases like 100 times slower than if you had enough RAM. So RAM is very, very important to make your machine run fast and run good. Another component is the HDD or SDD. That stands for hard disk drive, and then the SDD stands for solid state drive. In the old days, we didn't have solid state drives, but now on many of the devices, laptops, desktops, certainly phones, phones don't have a hard disk drive. They don't have a spinning drive in there. They use what's called solid state drive. And that's where you store the operating system, the software, the documents, the photos, the videos, the music, and any other user data is stored on there. SDDs, or solid state drives, are from 3 to 30 times faster than a hard disk drive. So you say, well, why don't we just use solid state drives for everything? Well, the cost per megabyte or gigabyte or terabyte is much higher in a solid state drive than it is in a hard disk drive. So if you want a lot of external storage, it actually is cheaper to have a hard disk drive than it is to buy the equivalent solid state drive. But certainly in things like phones and tablets, you aren't going to have a hard disk drive because of the size, because of the ruggedness. You don't want to drop it and have a hard disk crash or other things. So you don't see hard disk drives in many of the devices today. The last component, hardware component that we'll talk about, is the network interface. This is how does your device communicate with things like the internet. And that connection could be a Wi-Fi connection, could be an Ethernet wired connection, or could be a cell phone. And the cell phone could be 4G light or 5G connection there. After it connects to one of these networks there, that network may then again have to go through a router, a modem, and then your internet service provider. So if when you're talking about speed, it's all dependent on all of these things for your network interface. And if any one of them is a weak link or old or slow, that slows down no matter how fast your phone is or your tablet is. If you have an old router that's only capable of doing 100 megabits, it's not going to be as fast as a desktop that's connected by Ethernet that's going a gigabyte. Okay, this slide I show, you may have heard over the years a thing called Moore's Law. And this came about or was proposed or talked about back in the 1970s as the technology and miniaturization of transistors and microchips doubles every 2 years. And what this chart is showing, it may be a little hard to see, but if we go back to 1970, you had just over 1,000 transistors packed into an inch by inch square chip, microchip. Over the years, the technology to make those microchips has improved so fast that in today, so 50 years later, we're sitting at 50 billion transistors in that same space that we only used to get 1,000. That's why we have these multiprocessor CPUs. That's why we have memory that's up the wazoo. That's why we have all of these things that have progressed because the devices have gotten faster. What that also means is if you have a device, be it a phone, be it a tablet, be it a laptop, be it a desktop, if it starts getting more than 3 years old, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years old, that's ancient in computer terms. The devices, for the same amount of money, you could get something that is 16, 32, 64 times, 128 times faster. The memory's faster, the internet connection's faster, the RAM is faster, the graphics display capabilities are faster. Everything improves so fast. So this is just to warn you that your devices become obsolete before they break down, and you just have to plan for this obsolescence and buy new technology as needed. Okay, let's talk about some tips to make your machine faster. Uninstall software. Uh, all the software or all the devices come with pre-installed software. So even your phones, your tablets, your laptop, your desktop comes with pre-installed software, and that's sometimes called junkware. And this is software that you never end up using. So you may have the computer, and over the life of the computer or the phone, you never use that. Also, you have software that you may have installed since you first got the phone or that. So someone mentions a certain package, you installed it, you decided to try it out, but you're no longer using it. You have to be brutal and uninstall everything that you don't use. So we all have software that falls into this junkware or that we've installed that we never use. Go through and get rid of it. If you're not sure what a particular piece of software does, because maybe you've never run it, just do a Google search and you can see what it is or what it does. Also, if you do delete any of the software, you need it later, you can always install it when needed. And this is, I just use an example. I go to the Minnesota State Fair every year in August, and I download the app, the Minnesota State Fair app in August. I use it while I go to the state fair, but then I uninstall it because I don't use it the other 11 and a half months out of the year. So there's an example, and we've all got apps that we may use occasionally. You're traveling, you use the app. Well, when you're done traveling, uninstall it. The more stuff you can get off your device, the better. Because any of this software that you have out there is using your hard disk space or your solid state drive there. It's using RAM, because even though you may not have opened it up, a lot of software is running in the background. It's using CPU, it's using battery, and every time there's an update to that app, it slows down your machine because it has to go out, download the update to the app, and then install it. And that's a huge waste of time and energy and all these things there. One of the ways to uninstall is if you have an Android device, a tablet, or a phone, go to your home screen, tap and hold the app. And if you just move it slightly while you're holding the app on the screen, you'll see at the top of the screen will be the words uninstall. At the top left, you just drag it over that, bang, bing, bang, boom, you've got it uninstalled. If you're on an Apple device from your home screen, tap and hold the app, and then a little menu will pop up, and on that menu is the words remove app. So couldn't be easier to do. On a PC, you can go to the Windows, Settings, Apps, and you'll find a list of apps that are installed on your Windows. And if you select one of them, you'll see a button that says uninstall. So you can go through there. On the Windows, it doesn't necessarily show you all the things that you have installed, but it shows most of the things that you have installed. So you may see some software that you may have installed that may not have put a setting there, but this is the easiest way to go out there and delete it from these various devices. So this is what it looks like in the Windows settings. Go to Windows settings and apps and features, and within the apps and features, it's going to list all the software that you have installed, and you can do your uninstall there. Okay, another thing you want to do to make sure that your machine is running as fast as possible and as safe as possible is to make sure and update the operating system and the software. Operating systems and software are full of bugs and security problems. These are constantly getting addressed by a vendor, and if it's not getting fixed by the vendor, that's another problem that you really don't want with software or an operating system. So there's updates and patches that you want to make sure that you do download and install on your device to keep it running at its best and also to fix these security problems. Many of the devices come with automatic or in some cases manual update to keep the operating system and software updated. I do list for a PC, there are some programs that'll go through and scan and tell you if you've got out-of-date software there that needs to be updated. Otherwise, typically, the way to update software is if you open it up and search up in the menu, either in the help or the tools or something like that, there may be an option there that'll say check for updates or install updates, and that's the way to keep it up to date. In Windows, if you go to the Windows settings, update and security, it will tell you if you have any updates pending, and you can check the history and see what's going on there. Okay, another way is to make sure that your machine is clear of viruses and spyware. And the way you do that is through scans. It can be scanning downloads, it can be scanning websites, it can be scanning files on your PC. On a PC, right now, I do recommend people use Microsoft Defender antivirus that comes with Windows. If you do want a little more protection, you can install and use antivirus that comes from Xfinity and CenturyLink, or there are free packages like Avast, AVG, Malwarebytes, and Bitdefender. But Microsoft Windows Defender and the firewall, the Microsoft Firewall, the suite that comes with Windows is very adequate to protect your computer. You want to check that you're using the most current definitions and versions, because this is certainly the one piece of software that is the most important on your computer to get updated. These definitions frequently get updated every day because there's new viruses, there's new scams, there's new things that come out, and the definitions get updated for what it scans for. Also, there's new versions of the software itself, and you want to make sure that all that is getting updated. I mentioned here that you want to make sure that you have only one antivirus program running on your PC and uninstall any other antivirus you're not using. So if you do decide to use Microsoft Defender, what you want to do is if you have packages like Norton or McAfee or AVG or Avast or anything else on, you want to uninstall that software so that your machine is not doing double duty there, and that'll really slow down your PC if you have multi-antivirus programs running. On a phone or a tablet, I don't recommend an antivirus for those. If you follow basic safe practices, you'll be just fine. The other reason is when you compare the operating system on your phone or a tablet to the operating system in Windows or on the Macintosh, you're talking about hundreds of millions of lines of code on these desktop operating systems compared to maybe a million lines of code on the phone. So there's less lines of code on the phone, which makes it less susceptible to hackers because there's less software that bugs can be found in. If you do install an antivirus on a phone or tablet, I'll warn you, it will slow down your device and will drain your battery. That's the main reason I wouldn't recommend it, is nobody wants their device running slow, especially if it really isn't offering much more protection. And the basic protection on the phone is completely different than the protection that's needed on a laptop or a desktop. I mentioned this if you suspect that you might have malware. Malware may pop up boxes when you're in a browser, or you think it's running real slow because things may be running in the background. You can scan for malware, And what I recommend there is using a package called Malwarebytes. But download it, install it, do your scan, and then in probably 99% of the cases, it won't find anything, which is good. You don't want to have malware on there. But once it says that it's done its scan and you don't have any malware to remove, you don't have to keep running the software because it is going to slow down your machine. So I recommend uninstalling Malwarebytes after you've done the scan. Okay, another thing that you can do is you can see what's running on your PC. And the easiest thing to do there is on a PC, hit Control-Alt-Delete, and then click Task Manager, and then you can select the Performance tab. This will show you what these main things that we talked about here. So the CPU we talked about, how that's running, the memory, the hard disks, how they're running, your Ethernet or your Wi-Fi or Ethernet connection, it'll tell that, and the GPU. And if your machine has very little memory, so in this case, this is on my desktop. My desktop, I have 16 gigabytes of RAM, of which at the time that I captured this screen, I was using 5 gigabytes. Now, if I had a machine that only had 4 gigabytes of RAM, I would be maxing out my memory and it would be running very, very slow. So this is a good indicator of if you do how much memory you have and how much is currently being used. If you start seeing this memory getting utilized at 90% or more, it's time to either buy new memory or buy a new device. This screen also shows you the type of memory that's in your machine. So over here it says the speed of the memory. It says the number of slots. In this case, I have 4 slots on my desktop, and the type of memory that it is, DIMM. The CPU reports if you have multiple CPUs, it'll tell you. And there's virtual CPUs and actual CPUs. So you may have 2 or 4 or 8 CPUs, and then the operating system doubled that by creating what's called virtual CPUs. Disk report will tell you how busy your disk drive is and how fast it's going. Processor tab shows what's running along with how much CPU, memory, hard disk, and network it's using. You also have the capability to end tasks. So if you had software that was locked up, rather than rebooting the computer, it's faster to go in here, end the task, and start it back up again. Most PCs have 60 to 200 processors running at any time. And so people think that, oh, I'm only running one package, a browser, or I'm running TurboTax or Microsoft Word. So maybe I have 2 or 3 processes running. Well, each of these processes has hundreds, if not thousands, of processes that are needed for that software to run. And it loads those into memory, and those are what slows down your machine, takes up memory, and keeps your machine there. If your PC is running slow, look to see what software is using your CPU, your memory, your disk, by clicking on the column to sort it high to low. So this is an example here. We're in the Processes tab of Task Manager, and you can see I'm showing the processes, and it shows the CPU, memory, disk, network, GPU, how they're being utilized. What you should see, if your machine is currently up to date with updates and stuff running in the background, you'll see this CPU sit at about 0 or 1%, and you'll see the disk at about 0 or 1%. Memory is going to be whatever you have loaded, and the operating system itself takes space, but you're going to have that. That'll usually remain constant until you start doing other functions which require to use more of the memory. This CPU and disk, when I first turn on the machine, so if I had my laptop and I first turned it on, you're going to see in some cases the CPU be at 100% when you first start it up. That's because there's all the software running in the background, doing updates, checking for Windows updates, doing virus scans, downloading definitions, and the disk the same thing. With all this stuff going on, you'll see this number may be maxed out at 100% when you first turn it on. And it may take it an hour for these numbers to drop back down to 1 or 0% to get all caught up. So what's running when your PC starts? I mentioned when you turn on your machine, there's many programs, utilities, and devices will install processes or software that runs when your device starts up. This causes your machine to take longer to start up, uses memory, uses a battery, and other problems. In Task Manager, there's a tab called Startup, and you can open that up, and you can see what has been installed or is trying to start up when you start it. Some of the names can be cryptic. You can either Google it, or if you actually right mouse click on the piece of software, it'll give you a definition of what that program is and whether it may be needed or not needed. What you can do in this tab is you can also disable a program from starting up. If you disable a program from starting up, it doesn't delete any files on the PC. It just means that when your PC starts up, it won't automatically start that software. If at a later time you do want it to start up, then you can go back and enable it if you want. Most of the items I have are on my PCs. I disable. I don't want them started when I start the machine. Now, I do have some items. Let's go check. There's another tab in there for services, which is like processes. But let's take a look in here. So this is an example of my desktop, and there's a whole bunch of things that have been added. Some of them are from the printer that I have, the HP printer. Skype put some things in there. Cisco did some things. There's Microsoft put a few things. MyHeritage put a thing. I've disabled them all. I don't want any of these things to start when my computer starts. The only thing I'm letting start is this piece of software called Coban Reflector. And if you've been to my presentation on backing up your computer, this is the piece of software I use to back up my computer. Well, in order for it to be able to back up my computer, it has to be running. And I don't want to manually start it each time, so I leave that in the startup so that it is started each time I turn on the computer there. So you may have some items that you want started, but the majority of items, disable it. Why have them started? Why have them taking memory? Why have them slowing down? This is the list of services. Services are different than processes. Processes are a higher level. I mentioned before that you may have like 60 to 200 processes. Those processes are going to use all kinds of services with all kinds of strange names. And you can take a look here. I don't recommend people go through here and turn them off or do things, but literally on PCs you have thousands of these services. Some of them are active, some of them are stopped, some of them are run when you start up the machine. Okay, another way to make your machines faster is using things like the Microsoft Disk Cleanup. Microsoft Disk Cleanup frees up space on your PC hard disk to improve performance. You just go to the Start menu, go to Windows Administrative Tools, and Disk Cleanup. And then a window will pop up like this. It has a number of options for files that can be deleted, safely deleted. And you can choose to check them all or only get rid of temporary internet files or whatever you want. You can pick out what you want and you can clean up your files. If you use a browser like Safari, so this will clean up your temporary internet files from Microsoft Edge, the Edge browser. But if you use other browsers like Safari, Chrome, or Firefox, you'll have to go into that software, go into its settings, and within its settings, you'll see an option to clean up temporary internet files. So you can get rid of files that way. For phones and tablets, usually you go to settings, and then there's storage, and then there's manage storage. And you'll see options in there to automatically clean up or delete temporary files, downloaded files, different things like that. I mentioned here, keep the good photos or videos and delete the rest. Where I talked about software, you have to be brutal. Same brutal you have to be with your photos. Don't keep every photo that you've ever taken because nobody wants to sit through a slideshow of all that. Pick the best, pick the ones that you need. Many photos we take nowadays are just what I'd call temporary photos. We may look at them for a day or two or send them to somebody, but then we're done with it. We no longer have to keep it. Go back through, delete the photos and videos that you really don't need. Also make sure back up or move your good photos and videos to the cloud to free up space. That's especially true of a tablet or a phone. Don't have it accumulating space on your device. Put it up to the cloud and access it from the cloud. Okay, another thing you can do with a hard drive is what's called defrag, and that's short for defragmentation. When a file is written on a hard drive, it's saved as a number of small, think of it as small boxes. These boxes are usually 4K of information, and it's stored in the first spot that's free on the hard drive. If you have like a 10 megabit file, that means that it is using 2,500 free slots on your hard drive. And if they're spread out all across the hard drive, that slows down your hard drive in order to read that 10 megabit file. If they're all together or continuous, it's much faster for that hard drive to read the first slot, go to the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, all those slots and read all 2,500 of those. So that's why defragging can be very, very important to speed up system there. As files are deleted, moved, updated, and just general usage, the files end up being split all over the hard drive. So you've got bits and pieces all over the place. Kind of like a warehouse with all these slots and the stuff all over the place. Well, if you start getting the things together, it'll run a lot faster. The more you use your PC, the more fragmented your programs and data get, because your programs even get fragmented because years ago, that version took X amount of space. Well, with each update, guess what? File sizes usually get bigger and bigger and bigger for that software, which means that it has to be written out. And when it gets written out, it's not next to where the old software was. It's in these new spots all over the hard drive. And it takes longer and longer to find and use what it's doing. To do this on a PC, you go to the Start menu, Windows Administrative Tools, and then you'll see an option for defrag and optimize drives. I mentioned here defragging should not be done on SSDs, solid state drives. So solid state drives, because they don't have the mechanical head that has to move and the disk actually spinning in there, operate totally different than a hard disk drive. So defragging is only needed on hard disk drives, is not needed on solid state drives. So on your phone and on your tablet that don't have a hard drive, you don't defrag them. Okay, some more tips. Close open apps when you're done and you're not using them anymore. If you leave them open, it's using CPU, RAM, and battery. And that's true on your phone. When you're done with an app on the phone, completely close it. Don't just go back to your home screen and open something else. Close it. And if you don't know how to close an app, Google it for your device and you'll see how to close it. You want to restart your devices to stay with a clean memory at least once a week. Uh, you know, in the old days, people were shutting down machines all the time and restarting them. Well, now my desktop, I leave up pretty much on 7 by 24. But once a week, I reboot the machine just to clean out memory and to give it a clean start there. And that's also true of phones. Many people may have gone a month without completely turning off their phone or rebooting it. Well, rebooting it on a phone makes as much sense as a desktop or a laptop. You do want to reboot, clear out the memory, start fresh. Here I mentioned remove excess widgets on your phone or tablet home screen. Many people may have installed over time a clock app, a weather app, a news app, a stock ticker, a photo slideshow, a calendar. All that stuff takes CPU, takes RAM, takes memory. Unless they're very important to you, get rid of them. Get rid of all this extraneous stuff that really may not add value to you. Certainly, if it adds value to you, great. Myself, I don't need the weather up there all the time. When I want to know the weather, I have a couple of weather apps on my phone. I can bring up the radar, I can check the temperature, I can check the forecast, and then when I'm done with it, I close the app and I'm not taking up CPU and battery and space there all the time. A few of the apps now have what's called light editions of apps. So Google and several other developers offer a light or go editions of their apps for old or lower end Android devices with limited RAM and storage. So if you do have an older device, you may want to look for the lighter version there. Smaller, less resource intensive there. Instead of installing an app, frequently if people have limited solid state space on there, you don't have to, in many cases, load an app. You can use your website or browser, and you'll have most of the functions. Check and see. An example there might be Facebook. Do you need the Facebook app? Well, have you tried using Facebook through the browser there? Does that give you enough functionality? So that's one way to speed things up and save on storage and that out there. Also, you can turn off Siri, Google Voice, and Cortana. Those are the voice message things. They're always listening, so it's software running in the background all the time and can slow down the machine. Okay, on a PC, one of the things I recommend doing is disabling PC indexing service. By default, your hard drive, or if you have multiple hard drives, they are being indexed. And what that means is Microsoft is going through every bit on that of every file on that hard drive and creating a search index for it. That can slow the machine down considerably. And really adds next to no benefit because people tend not to go into File Manager and do searches to try and find something. They may go into their word processor, or if you've got any organizational skills, you've created folders and you've organized stuff that way. And so most people don't need the searching capability there. And even if you turn it off, you can still search for things in File Manager. It just takes it a little longer to search than it would if it was indexed. That constant indexing of files slows down performance and does not benefit search performance except for extremely complex cases. So this is an example. If you go in and look at the properties of your file, you'll see there's options in here. Let me get here. To disable the indexing, go into File Manager, right-click on your hard drive partitions one at a time, go to the properties, and then uncheck Allow files on this drive to have the contents indexed. So you can see here I have it turned off for my my hard disk there. Another thing is there's other scans. So we talked about the indexing, we talked about virus, you have things scanning there. But in reality, you may have 10, 15 pieces of software or apps on your machine that are constantly scanning your drive. And some of those examples are things like a music app, iTunes, photo packages, or cloud file or backup, music players, antivirus, updates, notifications, and many others. They're constantly running in the background. They're constantly reading files, checking files, and it slows down the machine. Turn off scanning and directories and drives that you do not need. So I keep all my photos in one location. I don't need it scanning the entire hard drive, or if I have multiple hard drives, I don't need it scanning the multiple hard drives. So I limit it to just exactly where I put my photos. Another thing I mention here is leave your desktop PC on at all time. That way these scans and updates and things like that can occur in non-critical times. So they'll occur at night or stuff like that. If you turn it off all the time, so if I turn off, if I have a laptop or my desktop and I turn it off, and now it's been several days or a week since I last used it, when I turn it on and it starts up, there can be hundreds of scans and tasks that start running when I start up the device. And that can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 60 minutes to completely run there. And you can use Task Manager, I showed that earlier, where you can see what's slowing down your machine and see if the CPU goes down to 0 or 1% and the disk goes down to 0 or 1%. But you'll have all of these things running next time you turn it on. That's why I recommend, if you can, leave your desktop up. Or like I'm using a laptop here that I have. Well, rather than wait until the last minute to turn this on, when I may not have used it in a week or two, and have it go through and do all of its updates, I turned on my laptop this morning to let it get caught up, get virus definitions, do its scans, Windows to check for updates, and all the software to go through and check itself there. So plan a little bit and you can save yourself some aggravation. And when I say it'll take 5 to 60 minutes to run, that means that if you attempted to use the PC, so you turned on the laptop and you attempted to use it, the mouse is going to run very slow. Everything's going to be just crawling along maybe 100 times slower than what it normally is. And I get questions from people all the time. They say, I think I've got a virus because my mouse isn't reacting very well, or I click on something and it takes 5 seconds to actually do the command, or I'm in Microsoft Word and it's just very slow and sluggish. Well, that's because all this other stuff is running in the background. It's not because you have a virus. It's all these updates, all these things have to complete. And until they all complete, your machine is going to be very slow. Here I mentioned, if you can, turn on your laptop or phone an hour before you're going to use it. Excuse me. Another tip, manage the add-ons in your browser. So if you have a browser, browsers, Microsoft Edge and Chrome let you put in extensions. These extensions are just like adding pieces of software. It could be a weather bug, or it could be a stock ticker, or personally myself, I have a number of extensions. I use AdBlock Plus to block ads. I also have a password manager, that's in there, and I have about 3 or 4 other extensions. Only have the extensions that you use up and running, and disable the rest. And you can go into, in this case, Chrome here, go into settings, and from settings you can go to your extensions, and then you can do it. Okay, this is the last hope. Your machine is running so slow and you're saying, I have to buy a brand new PC, this thing is just a piece of junk. Well, if things get so bad, you can take the big step and hit the reset button and reload everything. Get rid of all data and stuff like that. Only attempt this when things are so bad and you have lots of time, because this is not a 1 hour job that's going to get done there. You can check the internet for tips on how to proceed, because the way that you do it on a smartphone, so you can reset a smartphone, you can reset a tablet, you can reset a laptop, a desktop. All of them are a little bit different there, but they all let you reset there. Make sure and back up any of your data before you do this, because there's different kinds of resets, and what I recommend to most people is do the factory reset, which means that you will lose all of your data that's currently on the phone. So you do want to have it backed up. These other forms of resets or that are iffy if they'll actually help or solve your problem. They may help a little bit, but if you want the maximum amount of help and are going to go through the trouble of doing the reset, you want to completely reset the machine and start from scratch. Okay, that's it there. Let me get out of this and let's see if I can get back here. So we'll bring up the chat. I'll turn on my camera. We'll stop sharing here and we'll take a look at the chat first if anyone has a question, and if anybody online, if you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to ask a question too there. Okay, Mark says, this may come up, but at some point, please address things you shouldn't delete. That's easy. Things you shouldn't delete. Almost all the operating systems and all the devices prevent you from deleting the things that you shouldn't delete. So when I talk about going in and getting rid of junkware, or if you go into the settings, the Microsoft Windows settings, it's going to only show you things that you can delete, you can safely delete. So it's not letting you delete things that would cause Windows not to run, or if you're on an Android phone and you're cleaning things up, it won't let you delete things that'll stop the Android phone from functioning. So you're safe as far as what you can delete or not delete there. Okay, other questions, comments? Kind of a quiet group. Is it the cold weather that's stopped everybody there? Okay, Steve asks this question. Is MS config still useful, or is it all covered in Task Manager Startup? Actually, MS config is still an option out there, but for most people, all they're going to need is Task Manager there. So yeah, the easy thing is go to Task Manager, and that should give you almost everything that you need. There are some options within Task Manager to start up some of these other tools that are out there also.
This is Linda. Can I add a comment that I think Jim should receive some kind of award in heaven for his dedication to be here for this meeting today before he heads home early from work. And looks like the snow will be light for a while, at least on the east side of town here. So now's your time to leave, Jim, once we shut down here.
No,
I will be.
No, Linda, we do not want him to leave. As a retiree who's getting a pension, we want Jim to make sure that he's stocked up food enough to get him into the new year. he can stay at the building and continue working. If he needs to
And
contact his family, all he has to do is do a Skype or a Zoom call, maybe for a half hour or an hour over Christmas. But we want Jim and all active employees to work your butt off.
well, we'll just call you Scrooge, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell you what, a lot of times I get better internet response at home, so I will be more effective if you let me go home there.
Oh. Well, it looks like a good time to get out there because we're in the light gray color and the green has moved north of us. And you have maybe a half hour here before I think so. Sioux Falls just seems to keep producing more of that green snow indicating color, but that just passed through the east side of St. Paul, and we've got some light skies for half hour or so here, maybe. Who knows? They keep telling us it's going to be terrible, but I'm trying to believe otherwise.
Okay, I see a question. James asked, can you show us how to turn off scans like in iTunes or in programs? Each program is a little bit different. So if you go into like iTunes and go up, I forgot what the main option is, and we're kind of almost done with our time. But if you go into the first menu option there, you'll see the ability to add other, you'll see the ability to identify the drives and directories that are scanned there. So you can go in there and you can limit if what you have and where it is. When you get to programs, let's say like a photo program, it's the exact same thing. By default, some of the photo programs, if you're using Microsoft Photo, by default is scanning your entire hard drive for photos. If you just go in and say, this is the directory, I wanted to scan the pictures directory for this user, that's going to limit it on what it's looking, where it's looking for new content and that. And so it varies with each package, but almost all the packages let you add drives and directories and let you remove them or reset them. By default, though, a number of the packages are scanning your entire hard drive because it doesn't know if you, even though your music should be in the music directory, well, not everybody puts it in the music. So by default, a lot of these programs will be scanning your entire drive. You can go in and specifically say, I only want it to scan my music directory, and it's only on the C drive. It's not on, if you've got multiple drives on a desktop or that, you can limit it that way. Other questions, comment? Other than weather, we aren't going to talk about the weather.
Well, I'd just like to send holiday greetings to everybody, and I hope that they're either snowbound and joyful or working at 3M in a dedicated fashion.
Yeah.
But everybody, have a great holiday. And Tom, thank you so much again today for a great presentation.
Thank you, Linda. Yep. Thank you, Tom.
Paula, you're there too, is that right?
Yes, I'm here. I have a half day today, so I was in the office to start.
Well, maybe you and Jim should join up for lunch before you head home.
There was not too many people in today.
No,
Is
plenty of room in the lot.
requiring or having the shutdown for certain divisions used to not want us to come in for 2 weeks every holiday. Do they still do that, or are they desperately looking for workers these days?
we won't go into the worker situation because they've
Okay.
laid off a number of people, and it's we won't touch on any
Oh dear.
anything
So
going.
even if they don't have enough, they feel they can send a few more off into, well, hopefully pension enjoyment, but no, that age group is going to be coming up, I suppose, within the next decade where that was taken away.
Yep.
I'm very happy to be retired, and I appreciate
Yep.
the age group.
Steve asked the question, are browser pop-ups controlled and manage add-ons in your browser? Steve, what I use is I use an extension called Adaware, and that package is a free they have a free and a paid subscription, but it's an extension, so it's software that gets loaded into Chrome that manages blocks pop-up ads unless I give it permission. So some sites, if you block all pop-ups there, I'll warn you, you'll have trouble with a number of your websites because let's say your bank pops up a login. Well, if you're blocking pop-ups, that login never pops up. You can't log in, you won't get in. So certain sites you are going to have to allow to do things. Most sites, though, I can get by blocking them. And so over the course of me browsing the internet, it maybe stops 100 or 1,000 pop-up ads from coming in. But I loaded that extension and I turn it on, and it has options in there to designate sites that I go to as where pop-ups are okay, and so you can control everything from within there. That's not a function of Chrome, it's a function of the company that makes the ad blocker there. So yeah, if you aren't using an ad blocker, there are options that come standard with Chrome to do pop-up blocking. They just don't do as good a job as some of these third-party packages, and that's the whole reason that you have extensions and third-party packages is because in some cases there's bits of software to help you do things. And other extensions that I have, I mentioned a password manager. I have Adobe for capturing parts of the screen. There's an extension. I have OneNote for capturing links or parts of a screen and putting them in a OneNote document there. So there's various tools. Think of it as a toolbox. You're installing these different tools to help you do your job there. Any other questions or comments there? Any questions or comments? Thanks, everyone, and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye.
Be safe on the roads if you're heading out.
Merry Christmas all.